Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. It took a few days longer than expected. I think everybody was hoping that this would wrap up around Friday. Took a little bit longer than that. Seems like they needed the weekend to make the decision. But Monday, the Cleveland Browns hired Mike Rutenberg as their defensive coordinator. Now, I made a video earlier in the week talking about what it seemed like the Browns were looking for and what we know about all the candidates that the Browns had requested to interview. And it seemed like what they were interested in were up and coming kind of defensive pass game focused people. And I don't know if this video went up yet when I was talking to Tyvis about it, but it was interesting to me that that's where they were focused. And I think that does make a ton of sense, given that the Browns want to improve what they already were strong from last year, which is the defense. And if we identified any area in which the Jim Schwartz scheme had been let down over the last few years, you could say it's in the secondary, right? It's a bit too simplistic, a bit too predictable, and the Browns could stand to get more creative there. And from all words, it seems like Rutenberg has a pretty good reputation as a coaching assistant out there. We're going to go over some of the cosigns here. Then we're going to talk about how I feel about the hire. This is from Josh Kendall of The Athletic, who says, this is a big loss for the Atlanta Falcons. One of the best teachers in this league. He understands the back end at a PhD plus level, has a huge part of success back there. Whenever he gets a coordinator job this season or next, it's inevitable. He's too good of a coach. That's something that Jeff Ulbrich said about him, the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, where Mike comes from. So his last boss speaks extremely highly of him, right? Like Jeff Ulbrich said, he understands the game at a PhD plus level, huge part of the success back there in the secondary, and he's going to be a coordinator soon, was worried about him being poached. From what I hear from the people in Atlanta is that this guy was the priority hire for Jeff Ulbrich last year when he became defensive coordinator. Basically, he wanted to make sure that he could bring in Mike Rutenberg when he got the job in Atlanta. Blake Williams had some nice things to say about the hire as well. He wrote a lot here. I'm not sure if I'm going to read through all of it, but he said the wide nine attack in the NFL. Okay, he's talking about how what this guy does is related to the guy that they hired, right? So the wide nine attack and defense in the NFL was invented by GW, Greg Williams, and his defensive line coach, Jim Washburn, 28 years ago in Tennessee when they drafted Javon Curtis. Schwartz was a part of the QC on that staff. Then we took it to Washington. Rudy was the QC quality control on that staff. Then Rudy got with Pete Carroll tree where they were running wide nine attack front with Carroll and the Legion of Boom with match cover 3. Basically, match cover 3 is zone coverage that can easily turn into man coverage for those who just want a basic understanding of it. 3 high shell, which means 3 safeties back, but you have 2 of those guys are basically corners, and if they get anything vertical, they turn into man. So it's like match 3. It's way more complicated than that, but if you just want a basic understanding of what a match 3 is, that's what that is. Cover 1 behind it. Then Saleh and Rudy got with Korick, the defensive line coach at San Francisco, who played D-line in scheme with Washburn, cut his teeth as an assistant defensive line coach for him. Rudy has spent his entire career in that system through its various evolutions. What changes from play caller to play caller in system is 1, what coverages they decide to play behind the front Two, frequency mix of them, and three, how often and how many blitzes they use or don't use. Rudy is very smart, hardworking. Players love him, and he's developed all pro players at linebacker and defensive back as their position coach each place he's been. So, I mean, like, we're talking about the wide nine attack. I know that there's a lot of different opinions about Greg Williams and Blake Williams. But like, these are guys who live and breathe that wide nine. Greg Williams was a part of inventing the wide nine, as Blake alludes to. So the system, they brought him in because he's very familiar with what the Browns do. He's not necessarily from Schwartz's tree, because Jim Schwartz doesn't really have a coaching tree, but he's from the same tree and the same philosophy that birthed Jim Schwartz, if that makes sense. He has a ton of recommendations here. I mean, this guy seems very highly sought after. I'm getting getting word from people that I asked about Mike Rutenberg that this is a pretty strong hire for the Cleveland Browns. Now, again, I don't know how much that really means at the end of the day. We got to see him do the job. I remember when Bubba Ventrone got hired, and I heard that he was a great hire as well. But again, he was with San Francisco in 2020, passing game specialist. They speak highly. Everybody who's worked with him there speaks highly. When Saleh got the job in 2021, he made sure to bring Rutenberg with him as his linebacker coach. And Ulbrich got the job as DC in 2025, and he made sure to bring him with him there. That tells you something, right? When coaches are getting promotions, this is one of the first guys they call. That tells you something about what he can do as a coach and what his reputation is, and and what the results he's been able to get out of guys are. He's 44 years old, so he's seen as an up-and-comer, a riser. I think this is somebody who probably blew the Browns away during the interview process, and this is why they went this direction. Connor says this: I remember talking to Robert Saleh about his original young staff with the Jets when he first got hired. Rudy was one of the guys he pointed out, said it wouldn't be long before he's a defensive coordinator. He played a big role in the development of Jamin Sherwood and Quincy Williams with the New York Jets. Quincy Williams, all-pro linebacker, right, while he was there. I asked some folks who are friends of the show who would also be familiar with Rutenberg what they think. JP Acosta, who will be familiar with him from his time in Jacksonville, he said he's a good hire, going to vary up some of the Browns' coverage, integrable in the pass defense in Atlanta. He trained under Saleh. I asked my friend Trey Sean, who covers the Atlanta Falcons. He said this about Rudy. He was an Ulbricht's priority hire coming over from the Jets. Known for his work at linebackers, he's going to love Carson Schlesinger. While he did hold the title of defensive pass game coordinator, he was really splitting those duties with Jerry Gray, the senior secondary coach. The secondary did get better in his year here, but the bar was low after Jimmy Lake, and the unit still cost him 2 games. Overall, seems like a solid hire, was probably going to get poached next year, if not this year. So, Yags at round, people seem to have a high opinion of this guy. He seems like a guy on the rise, a guy who looks at this opportunity in Cleveland and says, hey, look, there's Myles Garrett. It's a wide 9 system. I'm super familiar with it. He thinks he can probably take this thing to the next level. And if there is somebody who is a hot shot defensive coordinator prospect, this guy looks like a hot shot defensive coordinator prospect. So, the early reviews are good. We'll talk about what he needs to be successful next. But let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Talk to you guys real quick about Sleeper, the app for daily fantasy, regular fantasy. And now, if you look at the pick section on the Sleeper app and go to the team section, you have predictions that you can now use on the Sleeper app. You can choose winners of games. So let's say you're a Cavs fan, the Cavs play the Wizards or something like that, and you think the Cavs are going to beat the Wizards, you can pick the Cavs to beat the Wizards in that kind of scenario. For me personally, I went with the Cavs getting the championship this year. And of course, I had to throw in the same for the Cleveland Browns winning the next Super Bowl. So if you want to join in the fun on that, make sure you join the Sleeper app. If you also want to use the Sleeper app for all the other things I mentioned, make sure you use the promo code Worst Take. Get a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Make sure you join the Sleeper app. So what does this hire say about where the Cleveland Browns are, at least in their hiring philosophy? I think if you look at what the hires they have made, and the major parts of the coaching staff have been, right, they go and get Travis Schweizer to be the run game, well, not the run game coordinator, the offensive coordinator, up-and-coming guy who did some really good work in Baltimore. You get Todd Monken, who's not up-and-coming, but a first-time head coach and a guy who's had a really strong coordinator background over the last 5 to 6 years. And then you look at the defensive coordinator, go with somebody else who's up-and-coming. So, if you had worries about the age of Todd Monken and maybe being too set in his ways, one, I think that's not really a good read on what Todd Monken is. Todd Monken seems to coach much younger than his age is. He's not one of the, like, honest to God, it's kind of funny, but like Todd Monken is more connected to what's happening in the trends in the current NFL than like Kevin Stefanski was. Not to say that I think he's going to be a better coach than Kevin. We'll see what happens there, right? He's never been a head coach before. We still got to see him be successful. But if we're just looking at what Todd Monken has done offensively over the last 3 years and how he stayed ahead of the trends and how Kevin has, Todd, despite being 60, has demonstrated that, he is able to stay ahead of those trends a little bit better than a younger guy like Kevin. So age doesn't necessarily determine whether a guy's going to be ahead of the curve or not. It's going to be track record. And what we can say is that they hired a 40-year-old on the offensive side of the ball that has a track record of, being able to stay ahead of trends in the run game. Defensive side of the ball, they hire somebody who has a similar track record, and people speak very highly of. So no, you did not hire a 30-year-old head coach or a 35-year-old head coach with 3 years of NFL experience. But what you do have is a pretty good mix of experience and youth on this staff that I think Todd Monken is hoping can bring us a good baseline for development, with the experienced guys, right, the older guys, but also bring in a lot of new ideas by having this infusion of youth. We'll see what happens and how this continues on, right? Who knows? We might be talking about Mike Rutenberg like the next Mike McDonald. He might, who knows? Maybe the Browns have a great defense over the next 3 years, and we're having the conversation that Baltimore had about John Harbaugh, which is, hey, should we just let Todd go and hire Mike Rutenberg, right? Like, he could be that kind of prospect on the defensive side of the ball, and he is set up to have a lot of success on the defensive side of the ball. I talked about this in a video I think it's going to release today with Tyvis that I recorded last week. But the defensive side of the ball is just a completely different ball game than the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the attractiveness of the job and how easy of a job, well, how set up you are for success with that job. So, going to be interested to see what he does. He has a background in the wide nine while also being somebody who focuses on the secondary. Maybe he can get the most out of this defense. It's still going to be tough, right? There's going to be some aspects of this job that are going to be a little bit more different than, taking over on the offensive side of the ball where, yeah, the expectations are low and the talent's not that great, but because the expectations are so low, it's going to be easier to get buy-in. For Rutenberg, he's going to have to prove himself, right? He's going to have to get buy-in from the vets on the defense, the Myles Garretts, the Denzel Wards, and I don't anticipate them making that difficult. I think they will, get on board pretty easily, especially if he is who all his peers have cracked him up to be. But if he can get that buy-in from those guys and the defense buys in and they're able to kind of marry some more complex secondary looks and blitz looks and be ahead of the curve defensively while also just having the raw talent that they have to throw on the defensive line, this could be the best defense in the NFL over a sustained period of time. So, there's a lot of potential there. Overall, look, don't know, not going to sit here and act like I have scouted Mike Rutenberg as a head coach or a defensive coordinator for a very long time. What I will say is that what I'm hearing from his peers encourages me. What I will say is that what I hear from people who have covered him encourages me. And I think that this hire, given what they've been trying to do at the coordinator positions, it's in line with everything else that they've done. And that also encourages me. So I feel good about this hire. I think this is a hire in the right direction. We'll see how this ends up. Again, just because a guy's getting good reviews and everybody loves him doesn't guarantee success. We've heard good reviews about Hugh Jackson. We've heard good reviews about Bubba Ventrone. But we also heard good reviews about coaches who did work out, right? Jim Schwartz, Jason Tarver, Bill Callahan. So sometimes the reputation holds up. He's able to be promoted, and he does a great job. Sometimes the reputation doesn't. We'll see what Mike does here, but it seems like people feel like this is going to be a successful stop for him. They're super excited for him, and they're super complimentary of him. I think this has a chance to be successful. And I like what the Browns, despite the turbulence in the offseason that they're naturally going to deal with by being the Cleveland Browns and coming off the 2 seasons that they have. We know that there's been turbulence there. We know that this hasn't been a smooth ride by any means. But what they've come out this offseason with the coaching staff, I'm not upset with. Is it the dream staff that some people were putting together in their head? Probably not. But if you kind of kept your expectations in reality with this whole thing, I think this is about what you had hoped, right? Get somebody with a strong offensive resume to run the offense. Have somebody underneath that guy who has a strong resume in run game production to go underneath him, and then a young defensive mind who might be able to evolve the concepts that you're running. All this works out. Now, hopefully everybody's on board. We can get the ball rolling, start recruiting for free agency, and start scouting for this system particularly, and really get in on the player acquisition part of this whole thing now that the coaching staff is figured out. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.